Hello everybody, and welcome to another Fundamental Games game playthrough of Skulduggery. This is a tabletop simulator port of a game that's currently live now on Kickstarter by White Flag Games. So let's take a look at Skulduggery. Skulduggery is a fast-paced, take-that style trick-taking game. Players are going to be sending adventurers into an unknown dragon's lair in hopes of making it out alive with the most riches, using a human's ability to peek at a dragon card, or a dwarf's ability to steal gems, a halfling's ability to swap cards, and even an elf's ability to double the value of cards in play. Each round, all the players are kind of working at odds against each other to steal from this dragon's lair. And they're going to think each dragon, there are 8 of them, have independent abilities that could injure players or cause them to lose gems. This game plays about 30 to 60 minutes, up to 8 players, a minimum of 3 players in the original Kickstarter that is live right now. The Kickstarter itself is about $20 US for a game, and then I think there's some shipping costs as well. So without further ado, let's get into the setup of the game, which is really quite easy. So if we take a look here, playing a 3-player game, this tabletop that you can see here, I've just drawn some lines for my own personal use, but I've set it up as a 3-player game. So each player is given a random card that will be their hero. And that hero is actually kept revealed or hidden from other players, so other players don't know what kind of hero card you have there. And the only role that plays in the game is at the end of the game, whatever gem color is on your hero will actually be worth twice the value. So for example, P1 or P2 on the left here, player 2, if they have any purple gems, they're actually going to earn 2 points each instead of 1. So the other players wouldn't know what these gems are that they're collecting, although they might catch on if they get a chance to steal. The second card that's dealt out is a face-up, what we call an adventurer value card. And so those are all the main cards in the deck other than the dragons, and each player will be dealt a certain amount of those cards depending on the player count. So in a 3-player game, each player gets 3 cards face down, but they get a face-up adventurer card. So those cards, not necessarily face down, these cards would be in the player's hands, but for ease of play on Tabletop Simulator, I like to make sure that it's visible for you guys, the watchers. And then the next thing that happens is we shuffle them up, and there are 2 dragon cards put into play, so one on top of the other, and at the end of each round the dragon is going to come into play. So the rest of these adventure cards actually aren't used for the rest of the game, and we'll just slide them over top here, and that's the dragons that the adventurers are going to be facing and looting. And then each player gets 1 random bag of gems. So we're going to shuffle these up. This bag is totally random, and each player gets 1 random gem at the beginning of the game to start with. And the purpose of the game, at the end of 2 rounds in a 3-player game, is to be the player with the most gems. But because it's a trick-taking game, stuff is going to happen throughout the round that's going to cause gems to go back and forth and value points to go back and forth. And so what happens is on each player's turn, they're going to be using their adventurer value cards, which also have special abilities, and trying to find a way to manipulate the board, whether it's for avoiding the dragon or trying to steal gems or hurt your opponent. And each of these adventurer types, there's a dwarf, there's an elf, there's a halfling, and there's a warrior or a human. They're going to do different things here, which you can see on the reference card. So we'll play through each of those scenarios, I'm sure, as we go through. We're going to start with P1 and kind of work our way around the table. So first off, we play with the revealed card first, and this one has to be activated. It's a must-do versus a could-do. So I have to put this into the play zone here, and when you play a dwarf character, you get to steal a gem of your choice from the player with the most gems, and if there's tied, which it is, then you get to steal from anybody. So unless I have the most gems I'm allowed to steal, I'm just going to steal from this player here, because nobody has green gems, so I'll just take the gold one here. So then play passes over to the next player. Player 2 would do the same thing. They would move their card into the play zone, and when you play a card face up, it's called activated. Later on, you could play a card face down if you just want the points but don't want the action from it. It kind of protects it. But for this card here, at the end of the game, if this stayed in my zone, it'd be worth 1 point. But what she also does is she doubles the value of any other card in play, including herself. So she could double herself, or she could double this one here, because that's the only other card in play. So we're going to double her. And to do that, we indicate that by rotating the card 90 degrees. So I rotate that card, I know that that card's worth double. Then we go over to this player and they have to play their card, and there's really not much worth them doubling. So it's a may, it's not a must do. So she'll do herself anyway, so she's worth double 0, which is still 0. So then what happens is we're on to the kind of the more thinky part of the game, where you have these 3 cards in your hand, nobody else can see what they do, and you have to decide which one you're going to play and whether you're going to play it face up or face down. So let's say, for example, I wanted to play this card. I could play it face up, and using her elf ability, I could rotate her and double the value of her. So she would be worth 8 points. But I just have to keep in mind, if another player plays a halfling, they could steal her away from me, and they would get the 8 points. So I'm going to play it safe with this player, and we're going to play that face down, which means nobody can take her or see what she does. She'll just be worth points at the end of the round. So then this player here will look at their hand, and they want to know what the dragon's doing. So they're going to put this card into their action zone and have a look at the dragon. So the other players wouldn't get to see it, but it gives this player an advantage because they can know what the dragon ability is at the end of the round. So they're going to know that this dragon is going to attack the player with the highest amount of gems, and that player is going to end up losing a gem. So it might be in their best interest not to have the most of gems at the end of the turn, and everybody else will gain a gem. So this player now knows that the Chaos Dragon is there. We go over to player 3. They take a look at their hands. They've got a halfling, they've got a elf, they've got a -1 dwarf. You might ask, why would you want to play a negative card? You don't have a choice. You have to take the negative points, but there is ways to swap cards and reduce or mitigate that. So the halfling looks like a card to save till later because there's nothing valuable on the board for him to steal. So he could play the dwarf card, and he doesn't know what the dragon's up to. He's going to steal a gem from the player with the most. And this halfling gets double points from gold, so he's going to take the gold gem. Then we go over to the elf player, and she's going to play her own dwarf, and she's going to steal back that gold brick that was just stolen, thinking maybe it was stolen for a reason. Then we go over to player 2, the human, and he's going to he could double the value of something, or he could also steal a gem. So he's going to steal this gem back. So now everybody's got 1 gem again. I'm going to go to this player, and they're going to... Oh wait, let's see what that Chaos Dragon said. Attacks highest gems. So you know what? He's not going to take his gem back, because he knows if he evens out the field, he'll just lose his gem anyway. So instead of playing his dwarf, he'll play his elf and rotate itself. He could rotate another player's -1 to make it -2, but not going to. Then the halfling gonna play their elf. Gonna hope there's no halflings out there, is what the player thinks, and double that. Then this player has an elf, and they could either double their 1 or double this guy's -1. So they're gonna double this guy's -1 because he has the most points. Then the dwarf plays, and the dwarf can steal a gem from the player with the most, or he could play it face down. So he's going to choose to play it face down. Then the halfling player will play their card, and they can exchange any card in their row that is face up with another player's card that is face up. So this could take this halfling or this dwarf, they're both worth the same there, and send it over here and take this doubled up elf player into their active zone. Alright, and that is the end of the round. Each player has played all of their cards, and so what we would do then is reveal the dragon card, and for these 2 players it'd be the first time they've seen it, and we would see that the person with the highest gems, which is player 1, is going to lose a gem. So they get to choose which gem they lose, but unfortunately they still lose a gem, so they throw this gem back into the gem bag and shuffle it up. And then each other player gets one gem. So this player gets a gem, and this player gets a gem. And that's how the dragon works. It just has a one-time strike at the end of the round, and that's it. So we put that to the side there. All right, and then we go on and collect all these cards, and they're going to get shuffled back up. So let's just get all these in a pile here, group it all together. Then we put this deck back together, shuffle it up, and we will redeal. Now this dragon here isn't revealed yet. Remember, this is round 2 of the game. So each player gets one card face up, and the player who's going to be starting is the player with the least amount of gems, or the shortest player, if there's a tie. So we're going to say the elf is shorter than the human, but shortest player normally would mean in real life. So each player gets one face up card, and then each player gets 3 cards. So these are all randomly shuffled up anyway, so it just doesn't really matter if I deal them out in order or not. It's computer generated randomness. My mouse has been finicky, so I apologize if my movements stutter at all. I'll invest in a new one very soon. Alright, so each player has 3 cards and a face up card, so this deck is no longer needed. And so the player with the least gems, we're going to have the elf go first, and they have to play their dwarf card. Now they play their dwarf card, and there's a gem to steal from this player here, so they're going to steal this sapphire. Then the human player must play their dwarf. It's a -3, so that's quite the penalty they're taking to play this dwarf, but they steal a gem from the player with the most, so they will steal this white one. And then this player can play their elf face up or face down. They're going to play it face down this time. Alright. Oh, on the last round I forgot to... Oh no, the player with the most points. Let me just check something. I might have missed something at the end of the last round. Okay, scoring. After the dragon attacks, the unaffected players determine the payout according to the bottom right. Okay, so you might have wondered about the points. The points only matter for certain dragons, and in this case, there might be dragons that attack the player with the most points, or the most red cards, or the most black points, etc. So points matter for some rounds, but not all rounds, and that's where the secret of the dragon, having the human, can help you understand how to score those points. But otherwise, you might not get points. Player will attack. Yeah. Yeah, just wanted to make sure I wasn't messing up a rule there. That would be unfortunate. Okay, so each player has played their face-up card, so now we go back to player 1, and they look at the 3 cards in their hand and decide what they're going to do. So they could trade this halfling for this dwarf, but that wouldn't accomplish much. They're not allowed to trade for that card. So the halfling they would save for later and decide they could steal a gem from the player with the most gems, or they could put this into play, hope nobody has a halfling, and score 8 points. So they're going to play this just to get that freebie gem that's been floating around, keeping in mind they want green gems, so they're going to snag that emerald. Then we go over to the human player. They've got a human, a halfling, and an elf to play with. They don't really want to double any of their cards, and there's no negatives to double. So they're going to drop their human and have a look at this dragon. So they know the smoky dragon is the one that they're fighting this round. It's going to attack the person with the most black cards. So the person with more red cards will actually be safe, and when it comes to points, they don't matter. It's gems that matter. So everyone else is going to get 1. So this player would actually want more red cards than black cards. So they're going to know that. Goes over to the halfling player. They look at their 3 cards. They also have a halfling, so we know there's going to be some gem trading going on. I mean, obviously the players don't know what's in each other's hands, but he's going to steal a gem as well. He's going to steal that gold back. So then we go over to this player. They could steal the 1-point human, not really worth it. So they're going to take their elf, and seeing as how they've not seen any halflings played, they're going to play that face down. Actually, nope, they're going to put it into play and they're going to sabotage this dwarf. So they double the value of that dwarf. So this player now is -6 for red. This player doesn't care knowing what the dragon is, but they could feign and say, oh my goodness, I can't believe you did that. I really wanted those points. But what they could do is play their halfling and then swap a card for a card. So if they wanted to be real obvious, they could swap this card for this card. And that might kind of give a tell to the other players that maybe red matters this game. So poor human player didn't realize that by trying to help themselves, they've given an indication to the other players what's up. So this sneaky little halfling, he's like, oh yeah, humans giving away black cards, eh? Guess red's the game this game. So I'm going to put my little halfling into play, and I'm going to trade this human here yonder. Give it back to this guy, and I'll take this dwarfy over here. Alright, then we go back to the elf player. They've got one halfling left, so they put that into play, and they're watching what happened with the halfling and the human. They're like, hey, that looks like a fun game to play. All that work for this elf, I don't need it. I'm taking your halfling. We go over to the human player. All they have left is an elf. They can double the value of a card. They're going to double the value of this for no particular reason, because they know it's worthless. And then this player gets to play the human player, which is worth 4 points, but doesn't really get them any points. And so that is the end of this round. So again, taking a look, if we read through the rules specifically, after every player has played all of their cards, the round ends and the topmost card of the dragon deck is revealed, which we're only playing with 2 dragons. And it says here, each dragon attacks a different player's group of adventurers depending on the type of dragon. The bottom left on the corner of the dragon card indicates which player it will attack. So again, it's attacking the person with the most black cards. This player has 0, this player has 2, and this player has 3. So it's actually going to end up attacking the human who knew about the dragon all along. And that goes right back into the bag. And on the right hand side it says everybody else gets 1. So we shuffle up this bag, and each of these players gets 1 gem. So we've now played the full 2 rounds, and once all rounds have concluded, tally up the number of gems each player has. The player then reveals their roll card and checks to see if they have any gems matching the color on their card. Those gems are worth 2 gems. So this player, the human, has unfortunately 0 points because they couldn't even figure out how to battle a smoky dragon. The halfling, who is watching and learned from the human, actually has 3 gems, but because they have a gold gem bonus, they have the equivalent of 4 gems. And then this wily elf on the bottom here, she's tried to get in the game, but she's only got 3 points. So our victorious player is the sneaky halfling with his special gold and his last minute sabotage. Well, at least making sure he didn't have all black cards. So there you go. That is a game of Skulduggery by White Flag Games. Talked to the gentleman who designed this game, Joe, and actually I plan to do a discussion with him about this game in a day or two, but I really did want to do just a live playthrough, show you how the game works. And keep in mind, this is kind of like, it's designed as a party game for more players than just 3. So 3 players is the minimum to play, and if players wanted a longer game, they could play with more dragons, make it more interesting, but the core rules just says 1 less dragon than the number of players, just to keep the game short within its time frame. So I always like to talk about 3 things I like about this game. So let's start with number 1. I like this kind of subtle take that mechanic that it has, where some of your abilities, such as the elf ability, just to rotate a card and make it worth double its points, can be both a pro and a con, because it can double a negative or it can double a positive. So this elf here was -6, whereas this dwarf was turned into a -6, which if red points counted would be pretty significant, because some of the dragons impact the player with the most points. So just a subtle take that. It's not kind of in your face, stealing all your cards. There's kind of a tit for that and tit for tat, and you never know what the dragon's going to do anyway, unless you have a human that can tell you. So that's the first thing. Second thing I like about it, in many of the games, the art always draws me in, and this game is no different. If you take a look at the lovely paint style of this artist, I really like what technique he's used. It's kind of no harsh tones. It's kind of a watercolorish look to it, and just looks like classic fantasy to me, and I like that look. So really cool. We're going to flip through some of these in a moment here. And so point number 3 is I like the hidden dragon aspect of the game. So there are multiple dragons in the game. I only showed you 2 of them, so let's go through the rest here for a total of 8 dragons. And each of these dragons has slightly different abilities, or what you call asymmetrical abilities. So if we take a look at them, we've got the 2-headed dragon, which attacks the highest and lowest values, so it doesn't matter who you are. If you've got the most the most points or the least points, you're going to lose a gem, and everybody else in the middle gets 1. So just imagine playing a 6 or 8 player game. 6 people would probably earn gems, and the 2 people that thought they were worst and best are losing gems. The fiery dragon, the person with the most red cards. The swift dragon, the person with the highest value, actually takes a toll. The groggy dragon hits the person with the lowest value because he's so slow and just woke up. And then you get points for different things too. So the furious dragon doesn't pay out at all. He doesn't let you take any of his gems. Whereas the swift dragon, the lowest value gets 2 gems, and the next lowest gets 1. So there is definitely a little bit of uncertainty into how the end of each round is going to be, unless you've got that lovely human card, which can give you a significant advantage, particularly if you're playing many players. You can plan ahead as to what you could do to sabotage other people in your team. So that's the third thing I like, is kind of that hidden enemy variability, which makes every game just a little bit different. Even a 3-player short game, you don't know which of the dragons are going to be coming into play. And if this gentleman Joe wanted to make an expansion or an add-on or whatnot, it'd be really easy just to throw in new dragons into the mix. The character variation themselves, they're pretty simple in terms of what they do, so it's not hard to learn the game. Anybody could pick up and play. And when I was talking with him, he said he wanted to design a cool fantasy trick-taking game that you could just pull out at a pub and play in 15 minutes to a half an hour, depending on the players, so you don't have to design super levels of complexity to still have a fun and strategic game. So there you have it, a game of Skulduggery. Hope you like what you saw. Again, it's just $20 US on Kickstarter, live now. I think it's on for another couple of weeks. And the creator is a super nice guy, and I look forward to doing a little interview with him as well and sharing that with you in the near future. Until then, take care.